It's time for What You Need to Know, where you'll learn the strategies and tools you need to grow your YouTube channel. Here's your host, Nicole Sanchez.
The first time I heard Jimmy Donaldson, Mr. Beast, speak, he was talking about thumbnails most of the time. He went into this deep dive explaining why they were so important for your YouTube videos, and it really stuck with me. And since then, I've heard a lot of top creators talk about the time and the effort that go into thumbnails. So it really is important. And today we're going to talk about what you can do to help improve your thumbnails, to help improve your YouTube channel. So we're going to look at this from my point of view as a solo content creator, and then also what I do at work, where I have designers who can make thumbnails for me and make all kinds of cool changes and do all kinds of cool effects. And we'll talk about the interesting parallels that happen there too. So first of all, the thumbnail is supposed to tell a story about what your video is about. Grab people's attention, assault their senses, right? That is supposed to stop them from scrolling for whatever they've searched for, how to bake the best chocolate cake, or, how fast is the new Corvette, or, whatever the content is, or maybe it's something technical, right? I work for a tech company, and sometimes those concepts are hard to show visually. If you were showing, someone biting just spicy pepper and making a face, you almost don't need a title on there, right? Because it's something about this hot pepper. Gosh, what happened? Why you know hot pepper? How hot is that pepper? But if you're trying to, explain, how a certain technology works, it's a little more complex. So there's that fine line, you kind of need to tread. Some genres of content creators, I'm not saying it's easier, but they can often get away with less text and do more storytelling. So I'll put up some examples, and you're going to know exactly what these videos are about with no text or very little text. And you'll see what I mean by telling the story, just on that thumbnail. And then when you talk about putting text on, I have a rule that I try to keep it at work, 1 to 5 words. We have very technical topics. So once in a while we break that a little bit, go to maybe 6. But after that, it just gets too hard to read. When people are scrolling on mobile, it's like this big, and you really 3 or 4 words is pretty much ideal, and as large as possible within, of course, room for your visual that's explaining, what the video is about. And again, simplicity really works. We can do A/B testing. I use TubeBuddy. Actually, I have TubeBuddy for my personal account also. And I have the Legend subscription both at work and on my personal accounts. And they allow you to A/B test. So that means that if I did, 2 versions of a thumbnail, I can basically load them into TubeBuddy, and they're going to tell me after 2 weeks which one would have performed the best. Oops, sorry. Apparently I left my sound on my computer there. But anyhow, so and then you will know, this one performed 3% or 4% or whatever better than the other. And then you'll kind of know, okay, that is what's attracting better attention. And I'll sure refine more and more. I'll put a link to TubeBuddy down below. I really like them. TubeBuddy helps you with all kinds of things. You don't even have to subscribe to a paid app. They have a free version that does help you with quite a lot of things, and then you can kind of step up. I just finally went to Legend last year. They had a really good Black Friday half off thing that I did. But we use it in my office too, because you can also do A/B testing for tags and things like that. So anyway, I won't get into tagging right now, but you need to really think about what the text is, because that with your visual grabs the attention of the viewer, and that will hopefully lead them to read your description, which will hopefully lead them to click on the video. And maybe just your thumbnail make them click on the video. But that's the whole point. I think of them as little mini billboards. Mini billboards was a great way for me to explain to my designers where I work what I was trying to do, because when I first started working there and was explaining what I wanted in the thumbnails, it was really hard. Most of the thumbnails looked like a PowerPoint slide, title slide, or had just a bunch of logos, a bunch of text, and maybe a little picture, and then an icon and stuff everywhere. And it was really hard at a glance to tell what these videos were about. So it took a while, and I actually ended up putting together a bunch of examples and explained to the designers what we're looking for. When I said each is its own mini billboard, it kind of clicked, right? Because I thought, okay, they can't just cookie cutter out text on the left, person on the right, slap logo, they are different. Now we do have styles within our thumbnails, right? Just because we have different shows, so that you can identify, like a snowflake bite from a Powered by Snowflake episode, because they have a different look. So we still have, because we have company colors, so we do have a cohesive look to the thumbnails, right, with the company colors. But you could tell a bite because of the type of, it almost like a bite outline kind of fused somewhere on the thumbnail. Not the same way every time, but it has that look. Powered by, we always have the logo of the company that is being interviewed kind of at the very top in a box. So, within that, even though they might look very different, have different textures, and the way we place the people can be different, where we place the text, that can all be different. But so you can almost have a little bit of sub-branding within your thumbnails, if, you have kind of different things that you talk about within, your subject, of your channel. Same thing, like on my channel, I kind of keep a certain look to my videos too, but they all look very different. But you can tell it's usually a picture of me. I've got a very bright white background, and then with like an accent color. And colors, that's another important thing. Bright colors do well. If you look at the big creators, they're always using really bright colors to just grab your attention, to make that thumbnail pop off of the page, right? But they're really intentional with how they do it. Most of these big creators are saying that they're working on their thumbnails often before they ever shoot their video, or they've planned it out. So when they shoot their video, they get those shots and really, really manipulate those a lot. One of the ones that Mr. Beast was talking about, I think it was the one where he was going through a drive-through 200 times. I think that was the video. And he was showing us in this session how, all the different versions that they had come up with of that thumbnail, and then the one they finally landed on. Things like the placement of an arrow, or kind of how much kind of white space they have left in certain areas. I mean, it's really, really fascinating how much tweaking they'll do, or the outline they might put around themselves, or I don't know if it was him, but another creator was talking about how they had several people on, or in this video, but when they put them all on there, it made it just too crowded, so they went down to one person. I mean, there are videos that have multiple people on them, where the thumbnail looks really cool like that, but you really have to see what people are clicking on. Mr. Beast was also saying that after, if a video isn't doing as well as he wants it to, a lot of times after the fact, he will go in and have the thumbnail revised and see if swapping that. And sometimes that'll get him 10% more views, which, given how many views he gets, that's, probably millions of views. But for some of us, that would be hundreds or thousands of extra views. And heck, we'll take that, right? Another really cool thing, if you're able to, is to show action on your thumbnails, kind of show what's happening. And I don't mean just by telling the story, but like I said, with arrows pointing to things, getting people to understand what the video is about. I did one about, touching up your own roots. And in that video, I kind of went like this, and I was kind of looking, and I think I had like a hair color brush in my hand, and you could immediately tell what I was doing and what I was worrying about. I was worrying about my roots. So, things like that really, really will help. Also using really bright photos, really without oversaturating, really pumping up the color of the photos helps a lot too. And then you can also use kind of focus and blur. So that can also make maybe, you, the person, or your text, or whatever the item is that you're showing, kind of look more 3D. And then also kind of simplicity. Have you ever seen the ones that are cookie ones, and they'll just show like a burger that's really small, and a burger another way, and another burger, and it'll say something like, home chef, fast food, and, $1,000 or whatever. It'll show, like, just, and very, very simply you can tell, or if they just have different smoothies lined up, and then their titles is something like, getting all your vegetables in 20 sips or something like that, right? So you really, really should think about your thumbnail. And the other thing too is, if you think about it ahead of time, you're not having to kind of recreate a scene. You can take those pictures or pose for those in front of your video camera as you have everything out for your video. Because I mean, when I'm doing beauty and hair care videos, I sometimes have tons of products here, and it's just so much easier to do it when I have it all here. And that's the other thing. I usually use my other camera to just, it has some remote app. I can just on my phone, connect, and I can hold it down here and I can pose and, make my faces and smile and whatever it is that I'm looking at, and just take pictures like that. A lot of creators, I know what they'll actually do is they will just kind of pose and hold in front of their video camera, and then using, Premiere Pro or whatever they use, because you can get a screen grab out of that. But you have to make sure, it's hard sometimes to get it out of an action shot, because you might, sometimes you might want that look or whatever, but sometimes if you don't want your mouth half open or, your hand not to be blurred, you're going to need to kind of pose for that type of thing. Or have somebody help you who's really good at taking pictures. I mean, if you have somebody, depending on what your subject is, that can help you take these pictures, that's always fantastic. Some of my favorite pictures that I've been able to use for my thumbnails have been when I've had my husband pop in here and he's been able to actually hit the shutter button for me so that I can use two hands, in expressions, because otherwise it's always just one holding something or doing something. So that's really nice also. There's always the timer too, of course. Just hooking up your phone, or if you can put a timer onto your camera and then just have it go, then you can use the two hands too. But, that is also more setup and more time. So I'm usually sitting here just using my Panasonic image app here to do remote for my other camera that I use. Sometimes there's so much going on in thumbnails that it almost behooves you to make yours a little bit more simple. We had that recently when we did some A/B testing, where we had the same text and the same photo of the person, but with one there was more accoutrement, there were more little icons, and I think we had an extra logo. And I was like, okay, give me that without all that stuff. I want to A/B test it. And the simpler one performed better by almost 4%. So really think about what you have on there. Does it add to it? The icon we had on there meant something to us, but it probably didn't mean anything to most people. If we were doing something, let's say for our technical folks, and it was some sort of a diagram or topography that meant something to people, well, definitely leave that. That would be attention grabbing for them, right? But if we're just putting random little kind of to decorate it, that doesn't mean anything. Is that distracting from the text or the imagery that really does mean something to them? So really try to think about that when you make your thumbnails. The other big thing is that you want to evoke curiosity in people, right? You want them to wonder, am I missing out by not knowing, the answer to this question, or what happened, or why did they choose that? I have one video that I did where I had to have this pre-skin cancer procedure done, where I'd had it done one time, where they put the stuff on your face and then you kind of sit in a room for an hour and a half and let it sit on your face. Then they put you in front of this light. And the first time I had it done, everything was peachy. Well, the second time they left it on a lot longer, and my face completely blew up. So I have this picture, my face completely blown up, and then my normal face kind of going, like that. So people are like, whoa, what happened? What was that? What happened when she had this procedure done? And, in the end, luckily everything went back. But that's actually one of my most fulfilling videos, because it really helped people understand like what this, it's blue light, PDT, photodynamic therapy, where it like kills the precancerous skin cells, right? But people can have different reactions depending on how long it's left on and all that. So I kind of had both sides of the spectrum of like it was barely anything to like just awful for weeks, and my face was like doubled in size. But that really made people curious, like, oh my gosh, what happened? Especially if they'd seen my first video where it was all pretty fine, and I was just trying to show what that is like. So if anyone has to have it done, I was kind of just trying to help people understand what it was. If you can do something like that where people are curious, what is going on, in this thumbnail, I need to find out. I'm curious. That is the best way to get people to click on a video. You also need to remember you're designing for a small screen. Most people, I think, is it like 80%? I think it's 75 or 80% of people are actually watching on their phones. So when they are scrolling through YouTube, looking at thumbnails, guess what? It's about that big, right? So you need to make it readable, make it very easy to see at a small size for people. I know some people watch it on their TV. That's so cool. But most people are watching on their phone. So keep that in mind. And I always try to shrink down a thumbnail to look at it and see, okay, can I read those words? And then I'll know, okay, that is going to be all right. And it's a good exercise, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, that thing that I put there, you can't even tell what that is. And then you might want to get rid of that unless it's somehow really important. Or you might say, oh, wow, that arrow should be larger, brighter, or that text really doesn't pop. Let me put something behind it. A lot of times you'll hear that it works better to have a person's face in the thumbnail. And in many cases, that's true, especially if there's good eye contact, with the camera for the photo, or an expression that really, again, evokes the curiosity, makes you look further at that thumbnail. But you certainly can do great thumbnails that don't have people on them. Again, depending on your subject matter, right? If you're talking about, the latest, I don't know, like electric Cadillac that just came out. My husband just showed me this very cool Cadillac that just came out. It looks really neat. In that case, if it's a car, something you probably want to show the car versus having your face be most of it. Maybe you could be in there with the car, but that is the focal point. Or like, I know a lot of gaming channels, they have very specific looks to the games. So in that case, very likely you're going to want to lead with a game, not necessarily you. Kind of think about that also, what would attract your audience. And also look at other thumbnails, other videos that you've done, and which ones are doing better. Are there any similarities with those thumbnails that seem to attract your particular viewer? That's another nice key for you to look at to see what's working. One really important thing is pretty obvious, but if you're just starting out, you might not have thought about this. Only use high resolution images, because if you're using low res, you look fuzzy or not crisp, it's just not going to look good. And when you get those high res images, if you aren't a designer or don't have someone in the family who can help, my husband is a designer, so he always does my thumbnails for me, which is really nice. But what was always a pain for him was cutting me out. So I actually found somebody on Fiverr who for a few dollars, will kind of cut me out of the photos so that I can give those to my husband and he can just do the actual thumbnail design. So, if it's taking you forever to do simple things like that, or you don't have someone who can help you, Fiverr has been a really good resource for me when I needed to get some design work done when my husband was too busy. And then sometimes it's also good if you have someone that you can totally direct, because my husband had certain opinions about thumbnails. In my first year, he kept using the same picture of me with the same expression over and over and over. And he was spending all this time doing all this beautiful design on the side that was probably far too intricate, too hard to tell at a glance what the video was about. It was like wrong. We were going the wrong direction. So rather than me like holding the lipstick or, the shampoo bottle or whatever I was talking about, he would have, have it there with stuff going on around it. Or I did some cooking videos back then. So instead of, me with, the cake pan or, whatever, it'd be just me again in that look with whatever that was next to me. And it just did not perform that well. And he and I were a little bit butting heads about that over time for a while. And then finally, when we switched up to me taking a different photo for every single video, it went so much better. So I wasted a lot of time. And I think that's a really, really good content, but really my thumbnails, were not doing my videos justice. So in the end, it all worked out and learned a lot from that. And again, like I said, the same thing. It's kind of funny. Things parallel themselves. Our designers are super, super, super good, but they're super busy. So when I came on board, whenever they're putting videos up and I wasn't there yet, they were just kind of slamming out whatever for a thumbnail, had the information on it. And there was no cohesive look. Sometimes it'd be the same thing over and over, just with some different words. But they do such an amazing job now. It's really cool. I'm really proud of how all the thumbnails on our different channels look, because we have we really have four. We have our main channel, then we have one towards our developers, and then we have one that is more of a thought leadership platform YouTube channel, and then another one that houses all of our non-English language content. But all of them have thumbnails that are easy to read and very well defined and interesting looking. So it is a lot of work, but it'll really, really pay off because you've done all the work, coming up with your content, shooting your video, editing your video, your title, your description text, which that can take a long time too, right? And then to not do it justice with a good thumbnail is really, is really a bummer, because you could be doing so much more. And I want to go back, actually. I have some videos that have just turned into evergreen that just do well, even though they're pretty old. And some of those thumbnails are pretty old. I'm thinking I should maybe update those, because the content's still good, but the thumbnail's probably looking a little bit dated. Or maybe it was one where it wasn't at the level that I have been putting them out now. So that is something I want to go back and do. And you can always go back and do too. And, even if it just gets you, 100 extra views a month, that's my dog walking through. Hey, Scout. I have to leave the door open when I shoot, because otherwise he'll bark at the door. So better to have him just walking on through here. I'll have to, want to say hi? No, he walked off again. I'll have to introduce you to Scout sometime. Maybe I'll put a little picture up of him so you can see him. He's a little black and white Tibetan Terrier. But anyway, enough about my dog. Back to thumbnails. If you have questions, by the way, put them down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. And, really just define your style, figure out what grabs the attention of your viewer, and, just keep refining and refining and refining. And, either do them yourself, or like I said, there's people on Fiverr. And there's also a company, what is it, Vid Summit? I love Vid Summit. I've been going to it for years. I've learned so much there. That's not VidCon, it's Vid Summit. It's not a fan thing at all. It's just for content creators. It's fantastic. It's always been in LA, but they're having it in Texas now in 2023. And it is really where you can learn so much. You should really check it out. I've been going, like I said, during the pandemic, there was 1 year it was off, then they did a virtual one, and then it was back again last year, which was awesome. And they just had the most amazing speakers, and you might turn around, the person you're sitting next to, even talking to them about different things, and all of a sudden you find out they have some massive channel. And so you just learn so very much. Like one big family channel I was talking to, I had no idea who they were. I don't really watch family channels. My daughter used to watch a lot of different ones. It wasn't one I'd heard of. And she was telling me that they actually changed their channel name 3 times. They changed kind of how they actually kind of did their content, kind of, how they were filming and doing things. And, they had several hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And then when they did all these changes, they went to millions. So, these big channels are always evolving. And, I think we just have to make sure we don't get stuck too much, in a rut also, as we move forward with our development and creating our content for our channels, because really life changes, right? And we want to keep putting out content that's relevant for our viewers. And, so that's all part of it. But I know this was supposed to be about thumbnails, and now I'm going down a content little chat here, but it all kind of, I guess, goes together, right? So hopefully this was helpful for you. Again, any questions from the comments, and I will see you in the next video.